All right, Jake, we'll kick it to you for pick number 20.
So to gain that contract, we also have to throw away some, which means I think it's time to rip off the Band-Aid and get rid of Gleyber Torres.
Mm,
I
that
think this is
hurts.
a dude who has had a tumultuous time. It does hurt because I love the kid, and he has been a big contributor for us, and he is like part of that baby bomber squad.
Yeah.
He's, he started off his career with two All-Star seasons in a row, and then 2020 hit, and all of that power that we saw in 2019 in the juiced ball era kind of dissipated very quickly, and it continued through 2021, and then he comes back this season, and he kind of looks like the older version of himself, but he still had a few games where he would regress back to his same woes that he had in 2020 and 2021. It sucks, man, because he did prove that he is a good second baseman when you put him there. He's so much more comfortable at second than when you put him at shortstop. That was a bad decision all in all to put him at short in the first place. But I think that it's time to move on from him because you do have Volpe and you have Peraza waiting in the weeds. I do think one of those guys could potentially get traded this offseason, but Glaber should be the first guy you're looking to move.
What do you trade him for?
I think that honestly, you revisit that Pablo Lopez trade from the Miami Marlins. It almost went through at the end of the trade deadline this past season. And I think you can still get another power arm. There is another pitcher in the current system that I think we could look to trade who I believe is arbitration eligible. I don't know if either of y'all are going to pick him. I'm just going to say it now. Domingo Herman. He's another guy that I think you could get rid of. Even though I like what he's done this past season, I think he had a low key good season. I think you can still kind of move those two guys and then bring in a true starting pitcher who Pablo Lopez would probably be a 2 or a 3 in most systems. He would be a 3 or a 4 for us. And I think that we're going to lose Tyone in the first place. Or we're ultimately going to lose Tyone. So this would be a great replacement arm if we brought in Pablo Lopez for a trade with Glaber.
Yeah,
See, I'm cool with trading Glaber if that's the return. If we're getting Pablo Lopez.
We can keep our standards high. That's my whole thing. Is like you don't have to necessarily trade Glaber, but if the right guy comes available, which I think there are going to be several guys available, Pablo Lopez is the standard of what I want back.
yeah. Like you said, Jake, I think the issue with Glaber gets to be money. And why don't you do me a favor and look up Pablo Lopez, his AAV
9.8.
for
Oh,
next year. But
yeah.
yeah, I think Glaber will be on the hook for about 10 million in ARB, maybe a little bit more. I think we have to trade him while the iron's hot. I honestly agree with this trade because we have Volpe, Peraza. I think this team probably retains IKF because I don't know if they're going to be full on to ripping off the Band-Aid and playing Peraza without a backup option. Um, and then we also have
Yeah.
DJ and Oswaldo Cabrera. Like, I think there's a lot of options around that middle infield in which if we're going to look into re-signing Judge, into getting Rizzo and Benny back, I think this is where we're going to have to start looking internally to get rid of Glaber. And that ARB number is getting pretty high because he's toward the end of his ARB
And
years. And once we put him in conversations, I think that's going to affect his season and his impact on this team. I've loved Glaber. I really like him personally. I think he has a lot of energy to this team, and it's gonna hurt. But I think it's the decision they're going to make, and they might have to make.
Pablo Lopez is estimated to 2.45 million, by the way.
How many? How much?
2.45.
2.45. Wow. So that's a shed of about $7 million from Glaber.
Exactly, and we'll probably have to throw in like a mid-range prospect as well. I think at the most I'd look at like maybe an Everson Pereira, even though I like him a lot. But there are like the Yankees farm system is really deep, so there are a lot of guys who can complement and pair with Glaber to make that happen.
I think the one thing that hurts so much if you trade Glaber, it's like you said, Jake, he was a part of that baby bomber group, and you expected so much out of him after his first 2 years. So it's been a massive regression. Even though this season specifically, he played actually pretty well. I mean, he had his ugly stretches. I believe August was a pretty ugly month for him, but September he started to pick it up. There was just so much potential there that wasn't reached. I thought that he'd be one of the top tier guys right now after what we saw from his first 2 seasons. I thought he would be a 30 home run or at least 20 home run, 80 RBI guy, batting 270 plus, 800 plus OPS, but it just didn't work out that way. So his production that he's giving us now, I think you can find that elsewhere. I think you would love to see something out of Peraza or even Volpe. Those guys steal bags, so they'll bring a different kind of energy that Glaber just doesn't bring. But Pablo Lopez, he's young. I think he's only 26 years old. He's not a free agent until 2025. And plus, selfishly, I like him. He follows me on Instagram, so it's pretty cool. So bring him to New York.
Maybe you can talk him into
we get him, Jrey. You're getting him on the podcast.
So it's funny that since you mentioned Pablo Lopez, I actually I spoke to him. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago because my parents were in PR, so they just saw this tall guy that was taking a picture with somebody, and they asked him, "Who are you?" And it's like, "I'm Pablo Lopez. I pitch for the Marlins." So my dad FaceTimes me, and he and I are just talking for like 10 minutes on FaceTime, and I had told him, I coach baseball at the Boys and Girls Club. I would love to have you around one day whenever you're in New York. And he was like, yeah, for sure. Whenever we play the Mets, I'll come down. I'll come out. So we followed each other on Instagram, and we've been exchanging messages in the DMs. So hopefully.
Dude, that's awesome.
When we send this podcast to Brian Cashman, we're gonna include your connection with Lopez, so that way we get Pablo Lopez on this team.
Yeah. You have an insight.
On the inside.
Yeah.
Sources close to Pablo Lopez say he's signing with IKF.
All right. I'm going to take my next move to dump Aaron Hicks. I think Aaron Hicks has been a pretty decent Yankee. I think after his injury, I don't think he's able to deliver at the outfield what we need. And he clogs up space. You give those early contract to guys like we did with Severino and with Hicks to bank on upside. And Hicks not being able to be a center fielder for us anymore. I don't think there's space for him in this team. I think essentially we're going to have to trade him for nothing for prospects. I think it's only about 11 million, I think, or 10 or 11 million. 10 million?
10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or 10.78.
So yeah, I think
under
that can be shed to a team that needs, that needs just a fourth outfielder or maybe a left fielder. He can give some decent at bats if he gets full run. Yeah, I think Hicks is gone. I think we don't pay anything, or maybe retain 1 or 2 million, but take nothing prospects. I think this is just a salary shed move.
I feel bad for the guy because his career with the Yankees at least likely ended with that slide between him and Cabrera in the ALCS, or was that the DS?
Yep.
DS. And you could tell that he wanted to be on the field, man, and he had all those comments earlier, like he didn't know what they were doing with him. He just wants to help the team contribute. He feels frustrated that he can't help the team contribute. It's like, that's because he was underperforming and they had to bench him. They had no other choice because his glove became a liability, not just his bat, So he's just been in the system for so long. And I always had a bad feeling about signing that 7-year, 10 mil a year deal in the first place. And that has not paid off at all. And I do think that he's shown flashes of a player that is capable as a fourth outfielder, like you alluded to. And I think he would provide better value in a smaller market with a team that has a little bit less pressure on them. So, fully agree.
Yeah, I really, the Aaron Hicks, the ending of it hasn't been a pretty one. The inconsistencies are really glaring. You see them clear as day. And I think it's for both parties. I think we're better off all splitting up and just letting them go his separate ways. We move on because, back in 2017, 2018, you thought this guy was going to be your center fielder for quite a while. And quite frankly, it didn't work out that way. So I think, yeah, it's time to move on from him. Definitely is. I mean, you got Bader now. You got some young guys coming up. So eventually he was going to get pushed out regardless. So I think it's better to rip the Band-Aid off now.
All right, Jake, take it right into pick number 14.
See, I'm torn right here. I'm considering dumping some salary, but I don't know if I can find a good trade. So I think I'm going to, let's see. Screw it. I'm trading Donaldson. I am dumping Donaldson's
All right.
salary. We need to clear it somehow, and I mean,
Mhm.
the reality is he'll most likely be back at third base, but I think that there's a suitor out there somewhere because he does still provide dynamite defense. You can't take that away from him. He was outstanding with the glove. But man, his bat was an utter disappointment, especially in the offseason. He's a guy that you expect as a veteran who's a former MVP to come in and really, get those big clutch hits and at least grind at bats and work a walk in the right context. But he did not do that at all. And some of the swings that he took were just atrocious, and he had that weird grin on his face. I don't think he's a great fit here. I thought initially when we got him, maybe he would provide that spark that we needed, that kind of villain character to come in and change the entire feel of this team because everyone thought that they were too nice, but clearly that's not working. I hope he proves me wrong this season if he is still there, but I think this is the perfect time to load some of that salary so you could go for A, extending Judge to a bigger contract, and then B, there are still other free agents out there to be gotten. And I think this would be a nice way to clear up some space for guys that are actually ready to play.
Yeah, Donaldson gave us a lot defensively this year, but his at bats were tough, especially down the stretch. Um, and given his $22 million price tag, that's a lot for this team, especially if you're looking at retaining Aaron Judge. Donaldson plus Judge last year equals Judge from this year. So if we can shed that, we have good third base options. Between a potential IKF, Volpe in the wings, Oswaldo Cabrera, that's his natural position, and DJ and Glaber. And Glaber wouldn't play third, but Glaber can take second to cover for third. We'll see where we get with Glaber. But yeah, I think Donaldson is a pick that we could shed, but I think the Yankees like him and really like his metrics. My one thing is I don't know if we can shed the 22 straight up. So Jake, you don't have to pick a player necessarily, or
Yeah.
Jrey, I'll kick it to you first for your comments. But how much of that money do you think we're pocketing in the form of either us taking on half of the salary or another player?
I think we're giving away maybe a prospect or two, like a mid-range one as well, to kind of harshen the blow for us. Um, I think that it's inevitable that we'll probably have to take at least 50% of that contract. So what, 11 million, something along those lines, for the season, 11 to 12 million. I think we're still going to end up having to eat, but at the same time, I think it's worth it because it does give Elaine an opportunity for young guys like Volpe to come up, which I think
Yeah.
we all want to see him at this point. I think it's time. He's already in AAA. He's going to be starting the season in AAA, so it's only a matter of time. I think that spring training is going to tell us a lot about him.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I mean, I would love to get rid of Josh Donaldson. Listen, when we first acquired him, uh, it sucked because I loved Gio. I really did. Gio's energy, he contact hitter too, Gold Glove defense. He should have won the Gold Glove the year before, but I digress. Uh, I I really thought that the energy that he could have brought to the lineup would have been nice. If he was hitting 30 bombs, then he could walk around and pimp his home runs and walk around with that attitude that he has. But when you're playing the way that you're playing and you look absolutely lost in the box, dude, it just doesn't sit well with me. I think this was a marriage gone wrong. And I think for both parties, it'd be better if they both split.
Yep, and we'll see if we can shed that, what kind of trade that would be, but we're putting that on the table. I think a lot of Yankees would agree after that postseason. Jake,
Mm.
take the floor.
All right, so for my pick, I have a bigger picture kind of move coming up for clearing some salary because this is another one that was painful to all Yankees fans to watch this season, and that is dumping IKF's contract. I think we need to look to move him because we are clearly like clearing up space in the infield right now. However, I think there are still bigger moves that we are capable of making, and I think one way to make that happen is by getting IKF out of there. I think after only 1 year, he needs a change of scenery. I think that he was completely mishandled by the Yankees management system. He asked for help several times about his shortstop woes, positionally speaking, and they said you're doing just fine. I think that has got into his psyche. I do like his bat, but I think it's ultimately time to really upgrade this middle infield and just the infield in general and go in a different direction. And also that clears about 6.5 mil from the salary.
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the nose, Jake. When you say that the Yankees mishandled this guy, I feel bad for him because I love the personality. He did bring energy. Um, he's a contact bat, which was a change of pace from what we were used to seeing with home run or bust kind of lineup we were with the last couple of seasons. So I did like what he could have brought, but ultimately I don't think he ever completely got comfortable in New York, and it's kind of hard, when you're playing uh, the most important position on the field at shortstop, and the Yankee crowd is no joke. They'll boo you out of the city. So he had a tough go of it. Maybe we would look at him all differently if he was starting at third base where he won his Gold Glove instead of shortstop. And I think maybe if that was how his season had gone, him playing third base, I think we would all look at him a little bit differently and say, "Oh yeah, this is a bat that we want to keep. He plays a great third base." Maybe not the long-term answer, but ultimately he would have been better suit playing there than shortstop the entire way.
Yeah, with IKF, it's tough,
Absolutely.
man. I see him as a utility option on this team. I could see him being back next year, but I don't necessarily think it's the best fit. I think he could be a solid util option on a championship team, so I'm interested to see where they go with him. But Jake, I think you hit it on the nose, man, and I think it is a pretty viable trade after this year, especially with our kids. We're playing Volpe and Peraza, our team with our kids up.
Yep.
I don't think there's a spot for him.
And I'm just saying there are so many free agents on the board right now that could really help this team a lot and also complement the young guys like Peraza and Volpe, especially if we are moving away from both Donaldson and
Yep.
um I mean the one person I'd explore moving is probably Montas, if I'm being honest, but
Mhm.
like I really don't have any complaints with going over for this roster.
Yeah, my only thing with Montas is his value, and that was like it was kind of a begrudging pick on my part. Like Yuendrys Gomez isn't going to be available for us soon to come up. So in terms of low cost starting pitching, because you need like 6 to 7 pretty solid starting options. Um, I think we kind of have to roll with him given how low his salary is. I think Pablo Lopez, if we can work that out, is a really good find because he's being paid nothing right now. Then we have a really high value starting rotation.
Obviously, like Jake, I'm not too fond of Frankie Montas at all. As I mentioned, I don't really see this guy as a Yankee, but partially that could just be because, we didn't see too much of him down the stretch. But I love the roster the way it's set. I'm cool with it.
Yeah,
Do we want to trade him? Do you guys want to entertain a trade? We're kind of hating on Frankie Montas right
might as well
now.
get some prospects for him at least.
Yeah. Who do we think? Or yeah, do we trade and shed his salary and say F it, we're going over the tax. Let's get a pitcher.
Could do that.
We could do
I
that.
wouldn't be mad.
What
Are we
pitcher?
going Death Star?
I think we have to.
Are you gonna say Verlander?